So you can't focus, you keep getting distracted, you have no motivation to actually reach your goals. And you think maybe because you don't have enough money, you don't have enough knowledge, you just don't have the discipline to actually reach your goals. And you've tried to build these things up. You try to get more money, you try to get more skills, you tried to build your discipline, but these things just don't work and you somehow just can't reach your goals. And that's because these problems that you think are the cause are not actually the root cause. It's just a symptom. The real root cause of why you can't reach your goals is because your dopamine system is messed up and you also don't understand it. But I want to tell you about the gas station method in the context of a long distance car trip, which will allow you to understand your dopamine system and allow you to control it in order to actually achieve your goals. And this is actually a method or something that trillion-dollar companies like Apple or Amazon use to keep their businesses successful and continuously more successful along the way, generating revenue. Although you're not a trillion-dollar company, so I'll tell you at the end specifically how you can use it to actually achieve what you want. But before we get into the specifics of the gas station method, how trillion-dollar companies use it, and then eventually how you can use it, I think we first need to understand what are the different parts to actually getting stuff done. So of course, in order to get anything done, you need to start. So there's a start to whatever you're trying to achieve. And of course, if there's a start, there's also an end or the end goal. So I would call this a goal. In between the start and then the end goal or the goal, there's of course task in the middle. So these are the things that you do to actually get to your goal. So how the whole process works is you'll start from the start, and you eventually do the task, and eventually from doing the task you eventually reach your goal. But you can see these arrows. These arrows are sort of like the energy that you need in order to get through the task or eventually get through to the goal or even start in the first place. And this energy can also be like dopamine. So this is all the parts to actually getting stuff done. You have these three different parts and then the dopamine that sort of drives everything. And this is also where the gas station comes in. So the gas station method is really something to understand the dopamine system and how it works and then how you can eventually utilize it. So of course, within the dopamine system, and you might already know this, there's a good part to it or ways you can use it in a good way. And then there's of course ways you can use it in a bad way or things that are bad for you. Starting with the good way, because I think the good way is what you want. You can imagine this long distance car trip and imagine that you're in the perspective of the car and realize that the car is something that is sort of like the complete goal of the car is to get your passenger from the starting point to the destination. So you have a starting point and you have a destination. And of course you have your passenger and then you have your trip. And eventually this car will go along the trip. And since it's a long distance car trip, you need to fuel up along the way. So you have like little gas stations. So the passenger would get into the car would go, and eventually when it starts to run out of gas, it would fill up on gas and then go to the next one after it runs out of gas again, and then eventually reach its destination at the end. And a couple of things that I want to point out here is that so this car has a little gas tank inside of it that keeps all the gas inside. And then in the beginning, the car is of course not turned on, and which means the car can't really move anywhere. It's just stuck at the starting point. So in order for the car to actually reach its destination, the car needs to start. So somebody, the passenger, of course, will need to turn the key, and that will get the car to start and start to move this fuel around the car to get it moving. And once this car runs out of fuel, so the gas tank here gets depleted, it needs to get to a gas station in order to fuel up on more gas to keep on going along the journey. And then it needs to continuously keep doing that, continuously keep filling up on gas at these gas stations. Eventually, to get to the end goal, and the end goal would be where the passenger wants to go. And as the car, you want to get your passenger to the destination. Now, bringing this into the context of dopamine, you have to realize a few things about this car. So this car, if it was you, so if you were the car, right, let's just say you here, if you were the car, your gas tank is sort of like the dopamine in your brain right here. And the end goal, you have an end goal and then you have a starting point. You of course need to start on this goal. You have to start on this journey or else you're never going to reach the goal, right? And then the dopamine is inside your brain, sort of like your fuel tank to actually drive you to eventually reach your goal. But then what are the gas stations? So the gas stations are actually like milestones. Milestones are like little mini goals within the larger goal that allow you to like fuel up on a little bit more dopamine and eventually push you to the end, just like the car in getting gasoline. So you have to realize, just like the car, that this dopamine system is completely internal to you. All the fuel, all the dopamine, like even the gas station, like the gas station is your brain, the gas is your brain, the dopamine comes from your brain, which is the gas station, and then all the goals, the destination, like literally all of it is in your head. So even if you think about like, oh, but isn't like the reward what's giving you the dopamine, then like the dopamine is sort of like something to reward you. But no, dopamine is not really like a reward system, and this is also backed by neuroscience, and you can look into Andrew Huberman, who does a lot of research into it if you want to learn more. Instead of thinking about it like a reward system, like, oh, I get $100,000, brain super dopamine, I get rewarded. But no, if that was the case, then by getting a penny, you would also get like a mini reward, but you literally don't care, right? Because it's all internal. If you think it's a reward, if you actually thought this penny versus the $100,000 were both rewards, like you would get dopamine from the penny and you would get dopamine from like the 100K. But the thing is, it's all from your brain, and you don't really think the penny is significant enough to actually like fuel up the dopamine on. So instead of thinking about the dopamine system like a reward system, now you need to think about it like a fuel system. And in a little bit, I'll get on how big companies use this and then also how you can use it. But first, let's look at the gas station method in order to understand how the dopamine system could be used in a bad way. So again, let's think about it into the context of you being the car. So you actually are the car, and this is a car. But then as the car, let's say you just want dopamine. So you just want to get to the gas station and you want to fuel up on gas because, feels good. You got to get that dopamine as the car, like that gas is like your dopamine. So as the car, you have your starting point, and then you go to the gas station and you get fuel and you fill up on gas, and you're like, oh yeah, feels good. But then this gas station was your goal in the first place, and then your goal was to get the gas. So then you'll just leave and you go back to your starting point and you're like, oh, I can go get some more gas. So you go back to the gas station. And then after that, you're like, oh yeah, feels good, I got some gas. So then you return to your starting point, and then you'd be like, oh, I just used some gas. I want to get more gas. So you can start to see, like, if the gas of itself was the destination to get the dopamine boost, you just keep going in the circle. And eventually the car will wear down. Maybe the gas station will start to give less and less gas, like run out of gas. So you don't get as much gas out of the gas station, and eventually you, of course, like you'll legitimately wear down the car. Like the car will be worn down, like the tires, something in the car will break. So bringing that into the context of you, so like let's bring you again, and then your brain, and then okay, so let's say your goal, similar to just the getting the gas, was like you got to get that meth, or you gotta go fat, or you want to eat some junk food or something like that. And your goal is for one of these. You literally you want the junk food because it tastes good and then eventually give you a dopamine boost. You want the meth and that legitimately gives you a dopamine boost. Or you want to like fap or something and then you bust a nut and you get a dopamine boost. If you do any of these things or do anything similar to this, where like essentially the goal is pleasure, the goal is dopamine of itself, you go similar to the car, you go and you get that, you get the release in your brain, and then you'll return to your starting point, and the starting point is like you not having the junk food, you not having the meth, or you currently not fapping, and you'll be like, I just got my dopamine boost, but right now I don't have a dopamine boost, like I'm at my starting point again. Well then, doesn't that mean I should go back to my goal? And then so you'll go back to the junk food, you go back to the meth, you go back to the fapping, and you return to your starting point, which is the state of not having that, and you keep going back and forth. And then similar to the car, it'll wear you down, and also by going back and forth, like these things will get depleted. But as I mentioned, like the dopamine system is completely internal to you. So rather than these things necessarily getting depleted, it's not really like that. It's like the gas in the gas station runs out. So the dopamine in your brain will like run out. So these things will be less and less effective, making you want more and more, and it'll just become this cycle of sort of self-destruction, literally. So now you understand the dopamine system, both good and bad, with the gas station method. But then how do these trillion-dollar companies use it? And then how do you use it, of course, as I've been sort of leading you on this entire time. So if you don't know, these trillion-dollar companies, or literally all businesses in existence, have a sort of business life cycle. And it sort of looks like this if you don't know what it looks like. And it has 4 stages to it. You have this initial stage at the start, and you'd call this like sort of like the startup stage, where the company just gets launched and then sort of go through its initial like getting paperwork done, hiring staff, and just really starting to figure out how to actually leverage the time and actually start bringing in the revenue. But once the revenue starts to really get streamlined and that whole process gets streamlined, it can start into the growth stage and really just starting to, lever up and really grow the business, grow the revenue as much as possible. And once it's done all it can with its initial starting point and leveraging the business as much as possible, the main business, it's kind of in its mature stage, or what it's called, which is when the businesses sort of leveraged all that it could, took all the market that it possibly can, and it doesn't really have much else it can do in order to continuously improve. And then that's where the fourth stage comes in, which is like, I don't know if it's exactly called this, but it's like the death stage or the decline stage of a business, where now it's sort of tapped out on everything. It's sort of redone and reused and optimized everything that it possibly has, and then the business eventually dies. But if you know about the business life cycle, there's actually one more part to it, which is like this dotted line. Usually it's represented it as, and this is what you call a life extension. And then the life extension is something like, so these trillion dollar companies, right? Like Amazon, it started as a bookstore, and then let's say it went through all these stages. So it started up, it grew its bookstore, and eventually it was like a really good online bookstore. But if it stayed a bookstore and just kept doing that over and over again, similar to like the bad dopamine system, and just repeated the same thing over and over again, tried to do the same thing to get the same revenue, the same money, and not tried anything else, it would die, and it would be just worn down, ground until it's dead, similar to the bad dopamine situation. But then with this life extension, so let's say Amazon again, it would start out as a bookstore, and eventually I suppose it reached its maturity. But instead of dying, went the life extension method, which is now Amazon doesn't sell books, it pretty much sells everything. And then not only does it sell a lot of stuff online, like Amazon has their cloud services, and it has like their whole entire business section, it has like the influencer stuff, it has a lot of stuff to it, even like logistics or robotics. Amazon has a ton of parts to its business, which are tons and tons of life extensions. So bringing it back to like the dopamine system, like these life extensions are like Amazon hitting the milestones, which gives it more gas. Sort of like these life extensions, you can imagine like restarting again right here, but then adding that on top. So imagine if this was put right here, it'd start again in the startup phase and eventually grow and mature. And if Amazon or any company continuously keeps adding those life extensions, it can like almost infinitely, like potentially like stay like in the growth phase, and then every single time it reaches mature, like add a new product line, break into a new market, or like find some new intellectual property, something that is able to like super boost something that already exists. So like the dopamine system, it has the starting point and then it has an ending point. But then you also have to realize that these goals, these end goals that you have in your mind are not really end goals. They're actually still just sort of milestones along the way. So then similar to the business, you can just keep on giving life extensions, keep on going for the next milestone, the next milestone, the next milestone, and that will keep you productive, keep you improving, getting better and better, eventually getting more and more successful. Until you reach a point of success, maybe I guess you don't want to be successful anymore. You're not at that point yet. So now you know about how the trillion-dollar companies use it, and then bring these life extensions or to continuously keep getting their revenue. How do you now use it to keep getting more improvements, keep getting more success? Like very specifically, what are the very specific steps? And I want to bring it back to the different parts of getting stuff done again. So if you remember, you have your start, and then you have your task, and then you have your goal, which are milestones or goals. So I'll just do G/M. And then you have your dopamine that drives everything. You can think of this sort of like arrows along the way. And you need a little bit of dopamine right here at the start, of course. And that will come from sort of every single time you get a milestone. And this is how it works. So then how you can use it. Right at the starting point, you will first have to realize that all this dopamine comes from your brain. Every single part, the starting, the task, all your ability to get it done, and then also keep getting it done, and then also create these tasks and create these starting points is all 100% in your brain, okay, as I mentioned many times already. And then actually something very specific with the dopamine system is in the beginning, you're gonna have like sort of agitation or adrenaline in your body, and I'm not gonna tell like the super specifics, I don't really know. You can look at Andrew Huberman if you want to learn more about the dopamine system and how it works. But you're gonna have some resistance to starting, and the dopamine is what eventually clears that away once it starts getting through your system, and then you can start really on your task, focusing in and getting stuff done. And then for your specific tasks, you just want to make sure these things are able to get you to the right milestone. So like you have to make sure that you're doing the right thing to actually get to the milestone. Like if your goal is to write a book, like you actually have to write, or else you're not going to get to the milestone. So think about the task that you're doing, or like the fuel that you're using, like what you're using your fuel on. Like the car is using the fuel to go in hopefully the right direction to get to the destination. So the direction of where you're going is sort of like your task. If you want to write a book, you need to write. If If you want to start a YouTube channel, you need to like film videos. If you need to make money, well, you need to either get a job or start a business of your own and probably learn some skill to actually do that. And then these goals are milestones. So there's a distance here between the start and then of course each goal or milestone. You have to make sure that you have adequate fuel to use on your tasks or adequate dopamine to actually get you to the goal or milestone. But since these things are internal, like your gas tank of dopamine is internal, you can set these goals or set these milestones yourself. Like these are 100% in your control. So if you want to write a book, let's just say like, oh, I want to write like 100 pages a day, something like that. And this might not be goal, but just as an example. And this is sort of like a milestone. And every single time you achieve that, it'll give you a little bit more dopamine. But then if your goal was too much, like, oh, I'm just gonna write 1,000 pages a day, this is literally ridiculous, right? Like you can't achieve that. You won't have enough dopamine to actually push you through. Maybe you can't even physically do it. And the last thing you need to realize with these goals or milestones is that it is not the end. It's really just every single goal, every single milestone, whether you think it's the end or not, is really not the end. It is just another milestone to eventually get you started on something else. And then you can literally start the cycle again of going through and then, starting. So now you understand the dopamine system in the good way, which is essentially a cycle that gets you from the starting point in doing the tasks and keeping you fueled up with those milestones to again start on something else and keep on going, which eventually get you to where you want to go or as successful as you want to get. And then you also know the bad version of when you're seeking dopamine sort of as the goal itself, seeking pleasure, you sort of go into a self-destructive cycle, like literally, and that is something that you can avoid. And if you thought this explanation with the gas station method was helpful and could help you to become more successful, consider subscribing because I'll come out with a lot more stuff like this in the future.